In the world of international diplomacy and influence, there is a new tool for soft power: vaccines. So what is going on? Firstly, America won't share. The Trump administration's Operation Warp Speed involved funneling $18 billion into research for major vaccine candidates. In return, America has received hundreds of millions of doses of vaccines approved after clinical trials. But the country has refused to share vaccines with others and has stayed clear of global efforts to make shots affordable. The argument? America first. President-elect Joe Biden and his team have not yet declared whether they'll continue with that approach. But that brings us to our second point: China and Russia will. The Trump administration's logic has left a giant void that Beijing and Moscow have rushed to fill. China has committed loans worth $1 billion to Latin American and Caribbean nations to buy its vaccines, and multiple African nations are in the hunt as well. Meanwhile, Russia has struck deals with Brazil, Mexico, India, and Saudi Arabia to supply them with its controversial vaccine, Sputnik V, which it approved even before Phase 3 clinical trials were complete. So far, cutting corners hasn't hurt Moscow or Beijing, which also approved its vaccines without complete tests, and no major adverse effects have been reported yet.
So, who wants to be a millionaire? No, something even more precious at the moment: to be immune from COVID-19. The World Health Organization is leading the world's largest ever collaborative vaccine project, called COVAX, that aims to provide at least 2 billion affordable COVID-19 vaccines to the developing world by the end of 2021. The European Union has pitched in with more than $600 million in funding, and China, after initially sitting out, has also joined the effort. The WHO's efforts could determine how soon the world reaches herd immunity, the point at which further spread of the disease becomes minimal. As well as China and Russia, we have India as well. Prime Minister Narendra Modi promised the United Nations in September that India, the world's largest manufacturer of vaccines, would ensure vaccines were made available to the rest of the world. India has also joined with South Africa to try to convince the World Trade Organization that COVID-19 vaccines be exempt from rigid intellectual property regulations so they're more affordable. But at the moment, India is behind Russia and China in the race. It's unclear when New Delhi will be in a position to export vaccines.
So, what are the benefits? Firstly, to expand influence. At a moment when COVID-19 threatens to shadow the global economy and test public health systems around the world for at least several more months, there's no better way to gain influence than by offering subsidized vaccines to smaller friends. In fact, some experts argue that reversing Trump's approach and diving into vaccine diplomacy should be the incoming Biden administration's first foreign policy priority if it wants to rebuild America's standing. Secondly, to gain market access. The global vaccine market, for all diseases, is expected to be worth $57 billion by 2025, driven for the most part by the demand for COVID-19 immunization. And like any other industry, early market access can give those that get in the door an advantage. Once countries are used to and trust Chinese or Russian vaccines, their American or Indian counterparts would need to offer cheaper shots or other sweeteners to compete.
Thirdly, to fix public image. China's relationships with the world suffered in 2020. First, it was opaque about the origins and initial spread of the coronavirus. Then, while the world battled the crisis, it used trade and military threats to pressure multiple neighbors. But it's counting on its vaccine outreach to rebuild its image in different parts of the world, an opportunity made possible by the absence of a rival American effort. Also, testing labs. There's one final, but critical, reason why vaccine diplomacy is useful. China, for instance, managed to contain the virus after its initial spread. By the time its vaccines were ready, it had almost no active cases of COVID-19, which meant that it couldn't test the vaccines on its own population. That's where diplomacy came to its aid. China has promised preferential access to its vaccines for nations that conduct Phase 3 trials on their populations instead. From Brazil to Bahrain, Mexico to Morocco, and Peru to Pakistan, multiple nations have signed up.
This type of diplomacy doesn't come without challenges. Firstly, halal only. Yet even astute vaccine diplomacy can run up against surprising challenges. Indonesia has bought 3 million doses of China's Sinovac vaccine, but is waiting for halal certification from its top body of Muslim clerics before launching the inoculation program. There's history here. In 2018, Muslim clerics announced a fatwa against a measles and rubella vaccine, calling it haram or forbidden in Islam. They later reversed their decision, but by then only 8% of children in remote Aceh province, which follows Sharia law, had taken the MR vaccine, compared to 70% nationally. Indonesia can't afford a repeat with COVID-19. Secondly, the Middle East divide. By the start of last week, Israel had inoculated 14% of its 10 million citizens. The 1.4 million Israelis already vaccinated outnumber those who've received jabs in Germany, France, Russia, Spain, Italy, and Canada combined. Yet, Israel has been slow to share vaccines with Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. Though the regions are formally governed by Palestinians, they're either landlocked or blockaded and so need Israel's assistance to receive critical medical supplies. Israel's vaccination capacity, if it were to be extended to Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza, would provide Netanyahu with a unique opportunity to thaw hostility and garner sympathy domestically, as well as across the region and the wider world.
Thirdly, the structure of vaccine politics. More than 200,000 Brazilians have lost their lives to the pandemic. But President Jair Bolsonaro, who has consistently downplayed the virus, even though he was infected himself, has tried to block the approval of a Chinese vaccine that São Paulo's governor, João Doria, has been advocating for. Doria, a traditional right-wing politician, is expected to challenge Bolsonaro in the 2022 presidential election. Critics accuse Bolsonaro of trying to prevent Doria from emerging as a savior before that vote. Fourthly, the rather troubled history in some countries. When South Africa launched clinical trials for a COVID-19 vaccine candidate in July, activists hit the streets arguing that Africans were being used as guinea pigs. Indeed, pharma giants have a spotty history on the continent. After a trial in Nigeria in 1996 on 200 patients, 11 children died of meningitis, sparking a legal battle and inspiring John le Carré's novel A Constant Garden. Will African societies be able to overcome their understandable cynicism to embrace COVID-19 vaccines? What the world's second most populous continent does could be critical to efforts to get close to herd immunity globally.
Finally for today, let's look at historic vaccine diplomacy. Firstly, historically, Jenner the diplomat. You may remember reading about Edward Jenner in school. But he was more than just the creator of the modern world's first vaccine for smallpox. The British scientist used his vaccine to build bridges with France in a period of constant war between the two nations at the start of the 19th century. Jenner also helped spread the vaccine in Russia, Turkey, and Spain, and among Native American communities in Mexico, Canada, and the US. Vaccine diplomacy is as old as vaccines themselves. Secondly, how the US and the Soviet Union came together during the Cold War. They were threatening each other with nuclear weapons and publicly waging ideological battles. But behind the scenes or the Iron Curtain, the US and the Soviet Union decided to temporarily set their differences aside and coordinate on the polio vaccine as the disease ran rampant. American Jonas Salk had developed a vaccine, but the rush to release it to the public led to 260 cases of polio from an accidentally distributed vaccine that carried the active virus. By the time a more sophisticated vaccine developed by Albert Sabin was ready in the mid-1950s, there was little appetite for large-scale clinical trials in America. That's when a team of visiting Russian scientists met Sabin, and they agreed to collaborate. The vaccine was trialed on 10 million Russian children, and once it proved successful and safe, was adopted back in the US. Finally, days of peace. There's not much that the Taliban, more liberal Afghans, the UN, and others in the international community agree on. But even at the peak of the Taliban's rule in the years of civil war in Afghanistan, the different factions agreed to tiny windows of peace each year starting in 1993. Called Days of Tranquility, these were meant specifically to allow health workers to carry out mass inoculation campaigns that were otherwise impossible amid constant conflict. It's a practice that has continued even after the Taliban was ousted from power.
Please subscribe, like, and share. It really helps us out and hope to see you next time.